Ho ho ho, hello friends. So every year on alabamaliberal.com we do the worst TV characters of the year, the best TV characters of the year, the best TV shows of the year, and then an annual movie countdown from worst to best. For 2024 it was an epic list. There was nearly 500 movies from worst to best. That's a mini review with a couple sentences, sometimes a couple paragraphs, and then a letter grade at the end, and then ranked. And that's going to take a while to do the movie list for 2025. Could take a couple months, but the TV stuff's going to be this year, and you can find all that stuff at alabamaliberal.com, where I'm going to post this video as well, and hopefully if the traction is a little bit better than usual, maybe I'll do video list the next couple years, but always check alabamaliberal.com because there's a lot of stuff that gets posted to that website that never is in the podcast or the YouTube channel because there's written articles and different things like that. And then a huge archive of thousands of articles and some interviews and some things I did a long time ago that never made it to the YouTube channel, so you can check all that out. But in terms of disappointing television, that's not the same thing as worst TV shows. So like All's Fair and stuff like that is not going to be on here. These aren't just crappy reality shows. These are things that should have been better than they were, or some stuff that's outright bad, like especially the bottom half of the list is just shitty and it really should have been very good, but it wasn't. The 10th place, just to give you an example, is Black Rabbit. And I'm going to say this with a heavy heart because I think the show is not bad. I just think it's disappointing. I thought it was going to be better than it was. It doesn't really feel like it should be a miniseries. It feels like it should have been a 2-hour movie, maybe 3-hour movie, and it's really stretched out. Some stuff is extremely repetitive. They run a lot of the same beats over and over again. The supporting cast is not very good. Like, in particular, the bookie thug that follow Jason Bateman around like a bad cold. I mean, they will not go away. Every time they show up, they make shit worse. You think, how does this help anything? So that really wore thin, and it felt like they were injected a lot to kind of keep the plot going and the show going, and it ruins the world. I think Jason Bateman is excellent here. Jude Law is pretty good. The scene where Bateman is basically like, you should have cut me loose a long time ago, and I just could have dragged you down, like I can't do anything right. I mean, that's really heartbreaking. So the technical aspects and the two lead performances are so good that I put this on here with a heavy heart, but I do think it is not as good as I wanted it to be or that it should have been. Giving you a better example is the 9th place, which is The Last Frontier, and it should have been good. You think, how can you fuck up a premise, which is Con Air goes down in the middle of Alaska and U.S. Marshals have to get these fugitives back? How can you screw something like this up? This should have been a can't miss, and yet it does miss. And the reason is because it's so complicated and convoluted. The main plot, I don't think anybody could follow with a gun to their head, and things keep repeating. Again, this should have been a 2-hour movie, maybe a 3-hour movie. It doesn't feel like a TV show that needs to be stretched out because it does feel so repetitive. They keep going over and over stuff. And the scenery in Alaska is beautiful in the scenes where they've actually shot in the snow. There's a lot of CGI here, and I mean really bad AI level stuff. A lot of this is very unconvincing, and I don't think it's as good as it should have been. Jason Clarke is pretty good in this. You can tell he wants to get some of that brotherhood magic. The Showtime show he was so good in Once Upon a Time 20 years ago, he wants to get some of that back, but the show just doesn't cooperate with him, and the supporting cast is not very good at all. Number 8 would be House of Guinness. This is a show that's on Netflix. It's by Stephen Knight, who's had a lot of really good shows. Some people love Peaky Blinders. I mean, they just go fucking nuts for that show. I almost think it's a little bit overrated, but some people really love that show. Taboo, another show he made with Tom Hardy, is very good. So he's a very talented person, and you felt like this was going to be along the same lines of quality, and it isn't. The two leads are not very good at all. The two main characters are not involving. You don't really care who takes over this Guinness empire. You felt like a show that maybe got greenlit very quickly, and they had to go back and rewrite a lot of stuff or throw in a lot of stuff, and it felt like they were constantly trying to catch up with what they wanted to do, and everything was on an abbreviated time schedule. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but that's just how it came across, and for me it was a disappointment for this last year. Number 7 is a show that I almost feel like I shouldn't include it because it's You, and for years You has been the worst show on television. I mean, I can't believe how acclaimed the show is and how much people follow this and get into this, considering how bad this show actually has been since the first season. The first season was excellent. Every season on Netflix got a little bit worse. Season 4 was awful. And then season 5, the 5th and final season, you thought maybe they'll get some of that first season magic back, but they don't. And You kind of dies as it lived, which is being brain dead and smug. That's the thing that always struck me about You, is I thought this is one of the dumbest shows on television. You have to really really suspend your disbelief to think he can keep getting away with all this shit. Nobody sees him for what he is. All these complex plot contrivances that happen to allow him to keep getting away with stuff, and yet at the same time, it's very smug towards its audience. It thinks it's better than its audience. It's not just a pure Dateline special or Lifetime movie where it's like, hey, we know this is dumb and cheesy, but go along with us. The Joe Goldberg character is almost like teasing the audience, oh, you like this? This is the kind of thing you like? And so it's sort of rubbing it in the face that they think they're superior to the dumb shit that they're putting out there. Even in the series finale, it's still kind of saying, maybe you're the problem because you liked this show all along. They're still trying to do like a society commentary on dangerous men getting away with everything and finding a fan base, and you think, yeah, but that feels really forced considering what we've just seen and how you've been asking us to root for this Dexter-like character for years, so I don't know if you're really in the best position to be smug about it. Somebody showing you something and then judging you for watching it is just not really the best feeling in the world for me as a viewer. Number 6 is CB Strike. This is a show that is so repetitive and is just so lost in its own nonsense that it's really getting to be almost unbearable. This has been going on for years, where Corman Strike and the female lead clearly are meant for each other. They're supposed to be together. They keep introducing other love partners for both of them. She's married to a guy, or he'll be dating a woman. You almost feel sorry for whatever poor black woman that Corman Strike is dating at the time, because the clear message is he's not going to wind up with her. He will eventually wind up with the only woman he's ever really loved, which is his partner in the detective business, but he could also get killed before that ever happens, because they're going to die of old age before they ever admit they have feelings for each other. Season after season, we're watching these two kind of sort of stumble into a romance that never happens, and that feels very repetitive, and the cases that they solve are not interesting. This is one of the biggest problems with the J.K. Rowling book series and now the TV adaptation. The mysteries are not good, and I don't know if anybody's ever sat and thought about that, but whenever people always say, well, British television, it's so much better than American TV. American TV sucks compared to British television. It's shows like this that they're talking about, and they're not as good as they think they are, because it's a lot of BBC and PBS stuff that is very formulaic, it's very predictable, it's either old-fashioned period piece costume dramas or these detective shows that are very boring and dull. They kind of feel like R-rated versions of CBS procedural shows, and they're not anywhere near as good as the best of American television. So because of that smugness, and because people are constantly trying to be like, oh, this show is so quality, you don't even understand how good it is, and it's like, yeah, but it isn't, though. This is the kind of thing that they do on American broadcast television all the time, but an R-rated version of it. And because of that, I get tired of seeing these shows overhyped. Once we get into the bottom 5, these shows are just outright bad. They're not good shows. And so for a good version of what American procedural shows don't do right, you can look at All Her Fault. This show is a ludicrous potboiler that aired on Peacock. It's a miniseries that is not remotely convincing. There's some good elements in it. Michael Pena's detective is a very good character. You almost wish you could see a show with him on it instead of cast of characters we're supposed to care about that we don't care about. Episode 5, where it's this main family and they're all airing out their past traumas and grievances with each other, and it feels like a very bad play. I'm like, this is like those plays where characters give very melodramatic exposition for an hour straight, and you think, nobody really talks like this. Nobody really sits there and has these long drawn out fights for an hour straight, revealing past traumas that, oh, you could remember something from when you were a kid and that reveals you were responsible, and you think, this is incredibly bad writing, and the central mystery is so ridiculous. I would say I almost sprained my eyes from rolling them so hard. The main performances are not very good. The main characters are not involving. You don't really care about anybody but the detective trying to solve the case, who's a supporting character. You kind of want to get away from this entire cast of characters before it's over with. This is a Dateline special. This is a potboiler. A lot of the book industry now is being propped up with books like this. These kind of Gone Girl knockoffs. You've seen 1,000 of them that are like Dateline specials in written form. But that, again, is a little bit like You, where it's like you're trying to act superior to the material that is really bad and obvious and just not very good at all, but because it's a literary work, it's like, oh, look at how clever this could be. It doesn't really work, and I think that All Her Fault is a good example of the kind of potboilers that are propping up the book industry, which is always the husband. No matter what it is, the husband is the one who done it. I mean, the husband could look completely unrelated to the mystery at hand. He eventually is going to get involved in it and be exposed as a terrible person. And so a lot of white women that like to drink wine all day and they kind of hang out and say, I knew it, the husband's secretly a psychopath, and so you feel like this is a very obvious thing. The second Jake Lacey, who's been the bad guy in so many Peacock shows by now, when he shows up, it would be surprising if he was a good guy. That would be the shocking part. After that, we get to a show called Smoke, which again has that literary influence in it. Dennis Lehane, the great author, this is the worst thing he's ever done. He's never really made anything this bad before. And I really liked his previous collaboration with Apple and Taron Egerton, which was Blackbird. Ray Liotta's final performances in that. It's a very good prison suspense drama, and Smoke is not good at all. It actually falls apart. What it set out to do doesn't work. And this is another example of they tried to shoehorn in a plot about the publishing industry. I almost never see characters have that as a job unless it's based on a book or written by a novelist, because the publishing industry it doesn't employ that many people anymore. And so anytime that you see something where the main character is a writer, or they want to be a writer, or there's some kind of connection to the publishing industry, it's like, okay, I bet an author wrote this, because they don't know that much about other industries or fields. But there's a twist with the Edgerton character that sucks. The overall performances, other than Journey Smollett, most of the performances are pretty bad. The characterizations turn on a dime, like the Rafe Spall character. He's sympathetic, not sympathetic, whatever the scene needs him to be in that moment, it turns, and then something worse happens. There's a climax in a forest fire that is so bad and so awful. It's even worse than The Last Frontier in terms of bad CGI, and it gets increasingly ridiculous as it keeps going. Even some of the supporting cast doesn't make sense. Like, there's a character who's another arsonist that is just so strange and bizarre. Everything that comes out of his mouth is like serial killer alert, and scene after scene, other characters are like, yeah, I hear you, brother. Like, what he's saying is just totally normal, and everybody just ignores it. Other stuff, like the Taron Egerton character being so unpopular and so unliked. His wife hates him. All these other people hate him. Scene after scene where he walks into a room and everybody just hates him, and it's like, okay, this is telegraphing this guy's supposed to be the villain from a mile away. I thought that was incredibly obvious. So they repeat certain things, and it becomes incredibly repetitive as the show keeps going. Again, would have been a better 2-hour movie than a miniseries. The number 3 position, which is And Just Like That, which I think a lot of people would say this has got to be the worst TV show of the year. This is definitely one of them. If they gave Razzies for television, this would have to be nominated. Sex and the City is a beloved show. The reboot, And Just Like That, is not. A lot of people looked at the series finale for And Just Like That, which a lot of people said that they tried to make it look like they planned that, but the show actually got canceled, and Sarah Jessica Parker and Patrick King, they didn't want to admit that the show got canceled, so they just sort of said, hey, we planned this to be the series finale, but it wasn't really. But you have characters like Cynthia Nixon's Miranda, who people have liked for 30 years. They have a lot of incredible affection for this character, and she ends the show covered in shit. Like, her 30-year character arc is that she's covered in poop by the end of the finale. And so you think maybe Samantha was the smart one. Kim Cattrall, who didn't want to be involved in this and took a pass on this, maybe she was the genius to leave this world of women behind. Carrie Bradshaw, she ends the series as Miss Havisham. She's in this gigantic mansion that she bought for a man who never lived there with her. John Corbett's terrible Aiden character, he was supposed to come live there with her. He never wound up doing it, so she's by herself in this too big house that had a bad rat infestation. She's wearing high heels, walking around eating pie by herself, and you think, this, compared to the original Sex and the City ending, is such a massive disappointment. How could anybody like this? And of course they don't. And the fan reaction was, man, this sucks so bad. So because that show really should have been so much better than it ever wound up being, I think that's got to go down as one of the most disappointing of the year. Most people would be surprised that that didn't take the top spot. They'd almost be like, okay, what could be worse than that? Well, the number 2 place is Real Time with Bill Maher, because this is a show that hasn't been good in years. I think I quit watching it around maybe 2021, 2022. I used to watch it pretty regularly, and I hated it for most of the last 5 years I was watching it, and completely gave up on it the last 3 or 4 years. But because I had watched it from the very beginning in the Bush administration all the way up through Obama and then the first Trump term, I guess I had a built-in nostalgia for Bill Maher. A lot of people do. If you grew up watching him on Politically Incorrect, you think, okay, this is a guy who's been around forever. All the old talk show hosts like him, like Conan O'Brien or David Letterman, they've all been shoved off the air years ago, and he's the last one still out there doing a regular late-night show. Why he's so disappointing is to watch a man that you used to, I don't know if you'd say respect, but watch him all the time, like go to the White House, suck up to Donald Trump, come back on his show, sane wash Donald Trump by basically being like, turns out he's not crazy. He was nice to me for 2 hours at the White House. He asked me about Iran and Israel. The fact that you're a late night show and he asked your opinion on Iran and Israel would show that he was crazy, not the opposite. But you're such an egomaniac, you think him asking your opinion on complex topics. In the other room, a Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who was a Fox News host, the man on the television said this, maybe that's what it should be. The fact that you can't put that together out of your narcissism is the problem. And then other stuff, like for years, he's ranted and raved about cancel culture and how bad it is, and you can't say anything anymore. When Stephen Colbert gets canceled, he doesn't say a fucking word. He doesn't say one thing about Stephen Colbert actually being canceled from CBS because of the White House interference to get a media merger approved. So that would be cancel culture in its absolute worst and most pernicious form, but because he doesn't like Stephen Colbert, he didn't say a word about it. When Jimmy Kimmel got yanked off the air for a week over the Charlie Kirk comments, he said something, but it was a little more lukewarm than it really should have been, and now he's like, well, Kimmel's mad because I said something about his wife, and so now we're not talking. Howard Stern's not talking to him because he said something about his wife, and it's like, okay, so this ancient bachelor who never got married doesn't really defend the rights of other late night hosts, and he just mostly shits on their wives, and now they get into feuds with him. It's just embarrassing versus who Bill Maher used to be and what he stood for a long time ago. And it's a good example of how you really shouldn't be afraid of cancel culture. If he had been canceled 10 years ago, people would be like, man, you remember how great Bill Maher was? Or they might say that, they might remember it, but now if he got canceled tomorrow, nobody would give a shit. Everybody would be like, thank God, finally it's over. You can stay out there too long, and you have to be cognizant of that. The worst thing that can happen to you is not dying or getting canceled or just hanging out there so long that you betray every value that you ever stood for, and everybody gets sick of you, that you're just not the man that you were, and you kill any goodwill that could have been accumulated for you over the years. The most disappointing show of the year is probably going to be divisive, but I pick Upload from Amazon Prime because this is a show that I loved. I loved the first 3 seasons, especially the 3rd season. A lot of people didn't like that season, but I really liked that season the best of them. And the 4th season comes back, and it is so disappointing. I thought, I wish it hadn't come back. It's so bad. Everybody always says, well, at least the show was given a finale. Sometimes it's okay if they're not given one. Like if the final season's going to be that bad, it's actually preferable if they get canceled, you end on a cliffhanger versus coming back for something that just sucks. The Ingrid character is the only one that gets the happily ever after. We never gave a shit about her and Nathan. So her and fake Nathan getting a happily ever after doesn't really make sense. The interracial couples get nothing. The Luke character dies heroically, but he really shouldn't have died at all. But he dies heroically and therefore never gets to hook up with the woman that he's been crushing on for the entirety of the first 4 seasons. Thought, okay, that's one white man, black woman couple that doesn't get a happily ever after, which sucks. But surely Nathan and Nora, the 2 people that are the main characters that we've watched the entire series, surely they get one. No, they don't get one either. And so you see something that this is a great example, or a bad example, I should say, of Hollywood's anti-miscegenation tendencies, where it's all so surprising that the interracial couple, they don't get the happily ever after, or so they think. They'd be like, well, we like that the show went in a different direction, but they never do it for the same race couples. They always let them be together at the end, and then the ones that are interracial, well, we thought we'd throw the audience a twist and we'd have somebody die. Both Luke and Nathan die, and both of their respective black female interests don't get to be with them. That's pretty bad. But even beyond that, the writing is not as sharp as it was. Everything feels slapdash. They clearly didn't have the money that they did the first 3 seasons. Certain scenes are awkward. They do this thing repeatedly where you can tell that they added something in post-production where like they visually show one thing and then there's a line of dialogue off camera where it like changes the scene towards the very end. A lot of shows do that because they don't have the money to go back and do reshoots. I felt that was especially obvious for Upload. And for all those reasons, I thought if a show that I was eagerly waiting for the finale for, and I'm like, well, at least they renewed it at all so they get a finale, and then I see it and it's so bad, I'm like, yeah, I wish they'd have left us on a cliffhanger for season 3 and not even bothered to finish the show. That's pretty bad when you can kill that much goodwill. So these are the most disappointing shows. Thanks for listening, everybody.